Hey everyone, I'm Natalie. My presentation is on William James Sidis, also known as the smartest man who ever lived. William was gifted in many areas cognitively, but the biggest areas were mathematics, languages, and literature. William was born in Boston in 1898. His parents were smart as well. His father, Boris, was a famous psychologist, and his mother, Sarah, was a doctor. William's IQ was estimated to be anywhere from 50 to 100 points higher than Albert Einstein's, so anywhere from 210 to 250 based on different articles that I read. William was super impressive even as an infant. He could read the New York Times by 18 months old. At age 3, he was typing out letters to Macy's to order toys for himself. By age 6, his language repertoire included English, Latin, French, German, Russian, Hebrew, Turkish. So this was a very talented child. At age 11, William entered Harvard University as one of the youngest students in the school's history. He was accepted at age 9, but the school wanted him to wait until 11. So, of course, he studied it tough while he waited and looked at Einstein's theory of relativity and corrected textbooks. What else would he do? During his years at Harvard and the years that followed, William wrote about cosmology, Native American history, rail transportation, invented a language called Vendergood. He wrote a book called The Animate and the Inanimate in 1925 to discuss the origin of life and cosmology. So his interests were all over the place. You would think that Harvard would be an awesome place for William to go at such a young age, but he really struggled to live a normal life. He had been made a laughingstock. He had been teased and chased. It was humiliating. He just really wanted to get away from academics and the media spotlight. So as an adult, William purposefully faded into the shadows and avoided the public scrutiny that followed him through his early years. He said that he wanted to live the perfect life, and the only way to live the perfect life is to live it in seclusion. So that's what he did. William had a brief stint as a math professor after graduation, but then went into hiding from public scrutiny. He moved from city to city, job to job, often used an alias. And he said, "The very sight of a mathematical formula makes me physically ill. All I want to do is run an adding machine, but they won't let me alone." While this was happening, he wrote a number of books. He wrote about the history of the United States, a book on streetcar transfer tickets. He loved to collect them. His books were never widely published. He used at least 8 pseudonyms. William sued the New Yorker for an article in 1937 in which they made him sound crazy, in his words, and ruined his privacy. They said things like, "America's greatest brain wound up a low-paid clerk." Soon after the New Yorker article was written, William sadly died from a brain hemorrhage. He was only 46 years old. Most people would consider his story to be a tragedy. Among the information that I read on Sidis, I didn't see too many mentors or tutors, which is unusual. His parents really served as his mentors, and they pushed him a lot and really wanted to mold him into the genius he became. And in his biography, it is suggested by him that they pushed him a little too far into the public spotlight. In Chapter 4, we discussed asynchrony. And asynchronous development is when the social, emotional, or physical development of skills are uneven. And this is really true for Sidis, whose social and emotional skills weren't even with his highly accelerated cognitive development. These traits seemed to follow him even to adulthood, and the asynchronous development that he had may really have contributed to him not fitting in with his peers, both in his youth, at college, and as a young adult. I mean, I could see not fitting in when you are 11 getting into Harvard. I would have recommended social skills or some kind of developmental skills for him at some point. His lack of a social life and life skills and ties to the real world outside of academics really impacted him and could explain why his story is such a tragedy. William had an accelerated curriculum, but a blended course with his same age peers might be considered nowadays to get him some exposure, and so he didn't feel so isolated. I mean, he was just a young boy, and he was experiencing peers that were not actually his peers. I also would suggest some kind of counseling services for him at any point in his life. I mean, that's my bias as an emotional support teacher, but this man clearly needed a check-in with a mentor or counselor. That brings me to my next recommendation. I think it just would have been so beneficial to have someone serve as a mentor figure for him. His parents really didn't seem to serve as helpful mentors in his life. Maybe they did serve as mentors, but they might have pushed him a little too far into the spotlight, which we know he did not enjoy. A caring teacher or just one caring person in his life really may have changed the course of it. Time to reflect. The case of William James Sidis raises a lot of issues. Should parents subject their children to intense pressure at such an early age? And how far is too far? Thanks for listening, everyone.